capacity building. This through institutional reforms. For example, we have the GCC Railway Committee, which is following up with the project implementation. And there is a proposed GCC Railway Agency as well that we are working on signing the contract. We haven't signed the contract yet, but we are working on it. The railway infrastructure and operation companies, which are vertically integrated. Technology transfer and training academies, and finally, one of the most important points is localizing the GCC railway supporting industries. As we all know, this project is relatively new. This whole industry is relatively new in the area. So we do need supporting industries to support this sector that is growing here in this area. There are a lot of investment opportunities, most critically needed in the human capital, the rolling stock and signaling and telecom, manufacturing, logistics and supply chain, research and development, and operation and maintenance. Finally, I'd like to say that this project is physically going to link all the GCC member states. Kuwait, it will start from Kuwait, and it is a vital link for this project because it will start from it and end in Muscat. So we hope this project sees the light and meets the expectations of everyone. For any information, please do visit our website or contact the Transport Department, the Transport Department email. Thank you.
Here's some interesting points that came out of Nada's presentation. Certainly the numbers related to the economy and the driver development is quite significant. I think that number of 250 billion US dollars across the region is significant. And clearly there's a lot of work going on in the background with regards to the institutional development of the GCC rail. So it's good to see it moving forward. And obviously there will be benefits for Kuwait, for you as a country as well. So it's good to see. Our next speaker is a gentleman by the name of John Thomas. John works for Etienne Rail. He is a senior advisor and a former board member with a transport and regulatory economics background. He has over 20 years' experience in the transport sector. John is Etienne Rail's regulatory affairs advisor and is responsible for liaising with the UAE's rail regulator in the development and implementation of a new legal and regulatory framework, as well as playing a lead role in the company for establishing the interoperability arrangements of the GCC rail. And with that, I'll hand you over to John.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to the Kuwait Economic Society for inviting me here this evening to give you an overview of the Etienne Rail project, the progress to date, our next steps, our overall vision, and how we see ourselves again as an important link in the overall GCC railway project. Just an introduction to Etienne Rail. We were formed under legal statute in 2009 as the single federal developer and operator of the Federal Railway. We have a mandate to improve freight and passenger connectivity throughout the 7 Emirates. We adopted a sort of a conventional project execution approach. I won't go into detail, Steve's already described it, but essentially, initially we, Etienne Rail, contracted with preliminary engineering and preliminary design consultants, and then we put out to tender the detailed design and build contract for our Stage 1 railway. We have project management consultant, we have an independent safety assessor, as well as our own internal safety assurance processes and our own internal project management team. So as Steve pointed out, it is quite complex, and we do have to ensure that the railway is built to the highest international standards, including safety standards. And I'll come on to a bit later as to what the overall legal and regulatory framework that has been established to help support that. You will have heard the term vertically integrated railway from Nada a couple of times. That is the structure of the railway industry in the UAE. What that means, in essence, is that Etihad Rail is the single company that both manages the infrastructure, the tracks, the signals, the structures, and also operates the train services. There are different models around the world. In Europe, for example, we've seen over the last 15 to 20 years a change from a vertically integrated model to a vertically separated model, where we have a separate company that manages the infrastructure and then separate train operating companies that run over those tracks. That's not the chosen model that the UAE or the other railway other countries have chosen. It's a vertically integrated model. Having said that, for our operations and maintenance of our Stage 1 railway, and I'll explain to you in a second what our Stage 1 railway is, we have formed a joint venture with an internationally renowned operator, Deutsche Bahn Schenker. Deutsche Bahn are one of the biggest operators in the world and one of the most experienced. And what we wanted to do, a number of things. One was to reduce the risk of startup. Creating your own operating and maintenance company when we don't have the expertise yet in the region would have been a big risk to Etihad Rail. So what we wanted to do was to create a joint venture with an international operator, but with a very clear contractual requirements to transfer knowledge to locals over time, such that sometime in the future UAE nationals will be able to operate and maintain their own railway. So Stage 1 of our railway is part of the overall 1,200 kilometres of railway in the UAE. It's designed in accordance with agreed specifications at the GCC level, which includes 120 kilometres per hour for freight and 200 kilometres per hour for passenger. The Stage 1 railway runs from Shah in the south of the country to Ruwais, which is a port, and basically we transport sulphur for ADNOC from Shah and Habshan, which are two gas fields. I don't know what's happening with this. Sorry. From Shah and Habshan to Ruwais for export. We've just started commercial operations as from the 1st of January. Up to that stage we were in testing and commissioning and trial operations, and we're now fully operational. We're carrying up to 11,000 tonnes of sulphur in one train with 110 wagons, and we will carry up to around 7.2 million tonnes of sulphur per year for our customer. In order to start operations, we did require regulatory approvals. We've heard already of the importance of a legal and regulatory structure. At the moment, the law that governs the railways and railway regulation in the UAE has not yet been enacted, but it's in its final draft form. It's going through the formal processes, and we expect it to be enacted this year. And it covers not only regulation, but for example, it covers the roles and responsibilities of the Federal Transport Authority, not only as a regulator, but in terms of setting the overall strategic aims and objectives of rail in the UAE. It covers elements that protect passengers and freight customers. So for example, what happens in terms of liabilities if things go wrong, we lose goods, we lose baggage, etc. So it covers more than just a pure regulatory function. Because the law hadn't been passed, what the Federal Transport Authority did was to set up an interim framework, an interim regulatory framework, and it joined forces with the Department of Transport in Abu Dhabi and the Roads and Transport Authority in Dubai in order to assess whether our railway had been designed and built to the safest international standards, and that the operation and maintenance had the necessary competent resources and processes and procedures in order to operate safely. So what we had to do was to submit our safety cases, safety management systems for both the construction and the operation of the railway. There was a team that then reviewed that, assessed whether the safety management systems were fit for purpose and had been followed in accordance with those safety management systems. And then ultimately we were provided with two authorisations. One was an engineering acceptance. In other words, the regulator accepted that the engineer's system was safe and that the operator was competent to operate on that engineered system. So this is the expected regulatory structure in the future. We have the Federal Transport Authority, and one of the things that they will also do, by the way, is ensure compliance with standards to ensure interoperability with other GCC railways. I'll come on to that a bit later. They will then monitor and enforce regulatory obligations to Etihad Rail and Etihad Rail Deutsche Bahn, our joint venture company. And in here, in the future, we expect to have a GCC railway agency which will facilitate and coordinate the development of common standards across the entire GCC railway network. Coming back to stage 2 of our railway, this will be 628 kilometres, and it will connect key ports in Abu Dhabi and Dubai with the Saudi and Omani borders. So this is a key part of our GCC railway, this section here. This is all part of the GCC main line. And this is Khalifa Port, this is Jebel Ali Port. It's designed firstly primarily as a freight railway, and this is our stage 3, which then takes us up into the centre of Dubai and up to the Northern Emirates, where there are many quarries, and we'll expect to generate quite a bit of aggregates and cement traffic from the Northern Emirates. You can see from here that the main driver of the design of the railway is freight, but I'm going to come on to passenger as well in a minute, because it's a very important component an important component of Etihad Rail's mandate. So you can see the legend here, up in the Northern Emirates, primarily aggregates and cement traffic. Intermodal is container traffic, so as you would expect from Jebel Ali Port, a significant number of container trains which will come along the coast into Saudi Arabia and beyond. And then what we call customer solutions it's basically everything else. So we've got the sulphur from Shah and Habshan to Ruwais. In the Abu Dhabi area here we have iron ore and finished steel products going to various places along the UAE network. So our actual network, which is this, down here, and then to our lane, you can see it very much follows the key generators and attractors of freight traffic. I'm not going to go into the detail of this slide, and it's out of date anyway because we're updating our economic analysis. But the key points I want to make is that the UAE, the railway just within the UAE, has a very strong economic case. If you look up here, we're estimating that our railway will have between a 10 to 15% economic return, not financial return. And the important thing to emphasise here is that we build railways, just as we build roads, for the wider economic benefits that they bring to the country. So what we're estimating, certainly were in 2012, is that for every 1 dirham invested into the Etihad Rail network will boost the UAE economy by 2.3 dirhams. A very strong economic case. So even when we're in times of financial difficulty, we still have to remember that these are 100-year projects, that they're very important long-term infrastructure projects which are going to generate significant economic returns into the future. You'll hear a lot in the next presentation about PPP, public-private partnerships. We at Etihad Rail didn't adopt a PPP model, but that's not to say that we don't have significant private sector participation. Inevitably, the private sector were contracted to do the design and build of the railway. I've explained that we have our joint venture partner, Deutsche Bahn Schenker, to operate and maintain the railway. And also, we secured private sector finance, banking finance for the Stage 1 railway. So plenty of private sector participation, and that will continue into the future. We've heard about the importance of localisation of the railway industry, and Etihad Rail takes that very seriously. At the moment, because we're a new start-up railway, we have a significant amount of international expert resource. But even in the construction of the railway, we have involved local companies. So the principal joint venture company that was the design and build contractor, Dodsell Engineering, which is a UAE-based company, were part of that joint venture, for example. But very importantly, we place a lot of emphasis on the transfer of technical and managerial expertise from international experts and companies in operating and maintaining the railway. And just one example again is our joint venture operator, DB Schenker. There's a contractual requirement for knowledge transfer, and that is measured against KPIs. We also have an Emiratisation initiative, and we're increasing the number of Emiratis both within the Etihad Rail PGSC, the corporate entity, and Etihad Rail DB. And Etihad Rail DB, the operator, relatively recently employed and trained our first Emirati train driver, which we're very proud about. Other learning and development initiatives are being implemented, such as developing associations with universities to develop rail programmes, engineering and other rail programmes. And importantly, we need to establish the right, what I call enablers, to encourage and lead the market to localise more railway manufacturing services in the medium to longer term. So this is about the railway companies telling the market over the longer term what we're going to require in terms of products and services so that they can start to build up their capacity and resources in order to deliver those. We've faced a number of challenges, and I just wanted to briefly give you a few. Most of these are technical challenges. Some of them you won't face in Kuwait because you'll have different topography, maybe not the same desert conditions, but certainly in terms of climate issues, temperature and humidity. One of the major technical challenges that we face is huge sand dunes and shifting sands, and how that impacts upon the railway. And we have lots of ways of trying to protect against sand ingress, and when we do get sand ingress, we have what we call sand ploughs on front of locomotives, we have sand blowers, we have sand suckers, we have lots of different things. Well, obviously we try to protect against, so we have fencing to try to protect against the sand shifting there in the first place. But it's inevitable that we're going to get sand accumulation on the network, and we just have to keep on top of it and keep trying different methods of alleviating the problem. Just a couple of slides on our future passenger vision. As I say, it is still a key mandate, even though the network was initially designed as a freight network. This is just a triple-level station that we expect will be constructed for Abu Dhabi Airport. So we've got the rail we have the rail at the bottom. The heavy rail here, and then the metro and light rail system and buses at the top. And what's key for the success of passenger services in the UAE is that we must make sure that they're competitive with the car in particular, in terms of door-to-door journey times, that they're competitive with bus in terms of fares, and that we offer an attractive customer experience. So we've been developing our passenger strategy along these lines. And crucially, we must penetrate the urban centres and ensure seamless integration with other modes of transport, particularly with the metro and light rail systems that exist in Dubai and that are planned for Abu Dhabi. And so, this is back to the freight network. as you can see here, this is Abu Dhabi Island. The freight network only comes into the industrial area of Abu Dhabi. Otherwise, it bypasses Abu Dhabi completely. So one of the key things that we need to do for the passenger network is to introduce passenger spurs. So we've got about 92-kilometre extensions here, take us closer into Abu Dhabi and link with the metro system. This is Abu Dhabi Airport, and then cut across and join the main line again into Dubai and up to Dubai Central. Absolutely key if passenger rail is to be a success. Finally, a couple of slides on connecting to the GCC railway network. Nada showed you a nice map. This is another version. What this shows you is existing railways. So we have our existing railway here. We have existing SRO railway and 1,400 kilometres of the SAR railway, and then we have the Haramain High Speed, which is planned, the rest of the SAR network, and then these are in future planning stages. Key benefits, significant time and cost savings, improving the efficiency of the logistics sector, will absorb. Freight volumes are going to continue to increase on our roads. So we need to absorb some of those increasing freight volumes on the railway and support economic growth in that way. Remove significant volumes of trucks, and the railway can be a catalyst for increased economic cooperation between the GCC countries. And just a couple of strategic issues. One, we believe that the GCC railway is a powerful symbol of unity between the GCC countries, creating a new transportation backbone connecting all major and urban industrial areas, and access to the Red Sea ports in the future via the Saudi land bridge will provide an alternative import and export route. I think this is my final slide. There's a huge amount of work going on in the background in relation to the GCC railway project. So it might not be visible to everybody, but as Nada says, we have various levels of governance, and at the lowest level, and what I'm involved in, we have 3 expert working groups which Kuwait is also involved in. One, to develop the institutional arrangements, things like customs arrangements, the GCC Railway Agency. One, to develop the operational arrangements, we've got 6 different operators, how we're going to operate between us. We're going to go across borders, our trains and our staff are going to go across borders. What are going to be the operational and commercial arrangements between us? And the third one is the technical specifications, track width, track gauge, structures, gauges, things like that. What I'm happy to say is that all of these have been agreed, and those of us that are in the construction phase are already constructing our railways in accordance with those technical specifications. These ones are more difficult, and we have to continue to focus on developing the right institutional, regulatory and operational arrangements in order to make the GCC railway a success. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention.
So I hadn't realised that, so excellent news. I did pick